Good afternoon, Ashlynn. How are you today?
I'm great, Danielle. How are you?
I'm great. So it's been a pleasure to talk to you thus far. We were talking a little bit about your experience in HR, and at this point in time, I really want to just give you the floor and tell me a little bit about the last 6 years of your career. So why don't we go ahead and talk a little bit about the type of work that you have done?
Yes, ma'am. So I will kind of start from the beginning, give just a brief overview, and then I'll go into a little bit of detail of things that I believe are relevant, if that's okay. So I started my career in HR not knowing what I was getting myself into. I applied for an HR assistant position with Hazelwood Auto Group up in Washington State. And I didn't really know what the HR space was like at that time. I was looking for a full-time job and I applied for this position, and they loved my personality and what I could bring to their team. And so they hired me. From there, I actually built an onboarding coordinator role with the VP of HR within that company. And we progressed that role through all of the ups and downs of everything. And I became the onboarding coordinator for that company. From there, I grew into an HR specialist position where I still did onboarding, but I also took on the roles of all of the pre-employment steps, as well as processing terminations and transfers for the company. From there, I grew into a generalist role in which I kind of dropped the onboarding. We hired somebody else for that position so that I could focus more solely on generalist duties, administrative functions, as well as I retained the pre-employment transfers and terminations portion of that position. We grew and then sometimes would downsize our HR team. So I had a various amount of responsibility within that company, which I believe really grew me into the HR generalist that I became. From there, within Hazelwood Auto Group, I actually became the recruiter for the company. So we had 8 dealerships at the time, so 8 rooftops, and we had anywhere between 750 and 800 employees. And I was the sole recruiter for the company. So I did all of the job postings, I assisted with interviews, I screened applicants. And then I also went and I did a lot of out of state traveling for recruiting. So I did that for about a year. And then I decided with my VP, we had a very long conversation. We had a wonderful relationship about my growth within that company. And, they loved me. However, and I loved working with my team, but there wasn't any room for growth in that company any longer. The next step would have been director or VP. And because it was a small enough company, until somebody left, there wasn't any room for me to grow into those positions. I was comfortable, I was happy, but I felt the need to be challenged a little bit more than I was. And so after a lot of conversations, I decided to take a step back down into a generalist role and hire for the recruiter with the knowledge of me leaving the company. And so I left. I took on a role with Varex, and they were a manufacturing and production company in which I did a hybrid of generalist and recruiting. And that was wonderful and great for a little while. However, I was overqualified for the position. They marketed it very differently than it was when I actually got there. And I felt even more stagnant in my role with Varex than I did with Hazelwood. And so that is when I started looking, and I took a position with Peninsula Community Health Services, in which I was a generalist with focus in recruiting for that company. And that was great. I loved PCHS. It was different. It was healthcare, but it was also community-based healthcare. So we spoke a little bit earlier about how the housing authority deals with people who have that need, um, and who sometimes are struggling, and they're there because they need it and not necessarily because they want it. And so my level of empathy in making sure that the right people are hired for the job is already there. I did that solely with PCHS. I made sure that the people that we were hiring for those jobs were going to be the best fit because they were working with people who didn't have any other option. That's what community health was, is we were caring for the people who needed it, who didn't have the means to have any other options when it came to healthcare. It was affordable healthcare, basically. So we did things based off of a sliding scale. We did a lot with the homeless community where we were located. We had people out on mobile buses who would provide services at no charge for people who couldn't afford it. And so one of my responsibilities was hiring those people. I recruited and hired for every single position from front desk all the way up to provider, in everything in terms of medical, dental, and behavioral health. So I did a lot in terms of that, and I got really good at being able to have conversations with people that kind of prompted that empathy to see if I thought that they would be a good fit for Peninsula Community Health Services and for that scope in general. Kind of what they felt in terms of outreach and um, the I guess the need the needier side of things, like people who have that need and not necessarily have the means to be able to fulfill that other than community health.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of it was a wonderful company. We did amazing things. We had some of the best outreach in which I was able to be a part of. As the recruiter, I went on a lot of those outreach kind of outings in order to be able to talk to people about the company. We hired quite a lot of people who were also patients. And we had a fantastic program in which the HR department was a part of helping start up, where we did housing for our employees who maybe didn't have any other options when it came to housing, because housing is not that affordable in Washington. It was very expensive. And so we knew that our employees, if they were going to be providing the best care to our patients, they needed to have that security of housing. So all of that kind of segueing into, I have never specifically been an HR manager before. However, I have a lot of leadership training and managerial experience. I've always been a go-to not only for our managers, but also for other employees and my HR team. I make sure that I'm equipped with all of the knowledge that I can have. And if I don't have that knowledge, I know exactly where to go and who to ask. I'm always looking to learn and grow my knowledge and grow my career. And so that's why I was really interested in the position, is I feel like it's a perfect next step for me in my career of wanting to continue to grow and learn and kind of be able to hit the ground running with this position specifically. Sure. While being able to learn about the company and making sure that I'm asking all of the right questions so that when I'm approached, I have the answers or I know who to go to.
Fabulous. Well, I think you've touched on, I have a little list of questions that I was going to ask you, and you've touched on every single one. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and stop this part of the interview, but don't go anywhere. We got a few more things to chat about.
Okay, sounds great.